Ethan had always wanted to escape the chaos of the city. When he found an old, isolated cabin deep in the forests of Maine, he thought it was perfect. The house was cheap, the nearest town was miles away, and it gave him the solitude he craved. He moved in at the beginning of winter, unaware that he wouldn't be alone for long. The first few nights were peaceful, aside from the occasional howling wind and the creaking sounds of the old wooden floors. But on the seventh night, something changed. At exactly midnight, a loud knock echoed through the house. Ethan sat up in bed, his heart pounding. He wasn't expecting visitors. He grabbed his phone, but there was no signal. The storm outside had knocked out the power earlier that evening, leaving the house in complete darkness except for the dim glow of the fireplace. The knock came again. Louder. Ethan hesitated before getting out of bed. He tiptoed to the front door and placed his ear against it. "Hello?" he called out. Silence. He swallowed hard and unlocked the door. As he pulled it open, the freezing wind hit him, but there was no one there. Only the snow-covered ground and the dark forest beyond. Then he noticed something disturbing. Footprints. They led to his front door. But there were no footprints leading away. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. His eyes darted around, scanning the shadows. Someone had been standing there, but where had they gone? His fingers trembled as he locked the door and stepped backward. He turned around, and that's when he saw it. A tall, thin figure stood at the end of the hallway. Its head was tilted unnaturally to one side. Its arms hung limp at its sides. It had no face. A horrible, wet knocking sound echoed through the house. But this time, it wasn't coming from the door. It was coming from inside the house. Ethan's breath quickened as the figure took a step forward. The dim firelight barely illuminated its smooth, featureless face. His body screamed for him to run, but his legs felt like lead. The knocking grew louder, surrounding him. It came from the walls, the ceiling, the floor. It was inside the house, inside the very walls. Then, something moved in the corner of his vision. The figure wasn't alone. There were more of them. From the shadows, several faceless figures emerged, their bodies twisted and unnatural. Their heads snapped toward him in unison, though they had no eyes. Ethan stumbled backward, his pulse thundering in his ears. And then they rushed at him. Ethan had always been drawn to antique shops, especially those hidden away in the corners of forgotten towns. During one of his explorations, he stumbled upon a dusty, full-length mirror with an ornate golden frame. The shopkeeper warned him, "This mirror has a history. Strange things have been said about it." But Ethan, dismissing superstitions, bought it and took it home. That night, as he settled into bed, he felt an unsettling presence in his room. He glanced at the mirror, and for a brief moment, he swore he saw a pair of eyes staring back at him, eyes that were not his own. Shaking off the feeling, he turned off the lights and went to sleep. Days passed, and the strange occurrences intensified. Shadows flickered across the mirror when no one was near. Whispers echoed in the dead of night. Objects in his room moved ever so slightly when he wasn't looking. One evening, as he stood in front of the mirror, his reflection smiled, but he hadn't moved a muscle. Terrified, Ethan tried to get rid of the mirror. He dragged it outside, ready to smash it, but just as he raised the hammer, his reflection spoke. "If you break me, you break yourself." Paralyzed with fear, Ethan watched as his reflection stepped out of the mirror, identical in every way except for its hollow, lifeless eyes. The doppelganger lunged forward, gripping Ethan's throat as everything went black. When he woke up, he was no longer in his apartment. Instead, he found himself inside a dark, endless void. The air was thick with whispers, shadows shifting around him like living entities. He ran, but there was no escape. He realized he was trapped inside the mirror. Meanwhile, his doppelganger lived in the real world, perfectly mimicking his actions. His friends never noticed the difference except for one. His best friend, Liam, sensed something was wrong. Ethan's behavior was subtly off. His eyes, once full of life, now seemed dull and predatory. One night, Liam visited Ethan's apartment and saw the mirror. He approached it and felt an inexplicable dread. As he gazed into the glass, a faint whisper reached his ears. "Liam, help me." His breath hitched. The voice was unmistakable, it was Ethan's. Determined to uncover the truth, Liam researched the mirror's history. It had belonged to a wealthy family in the 1800s, known for their mysterious disappearances. Legend said that the mirror was a portal, trapping souls while their reflections roamed free. No one who had ever been taken had returned. Liam knew he had to act fast. He waited until the doppelganger was asleep and then took a sledgehammer to the mirror. As the glass shattered, an ear-piercing scream filled the room. Ethan gasped, suddenly yanked back into reality. His doppelganger disintegrated into 1,000 shards, vanishing into nothingness. But the nightmare wasn't over. A small sliver of the broken mirror twitched. A whisper floated from it, almost too soft to hear. "You freed him, but who will free the others?" It was supposed to be just another weekend getaway. A group of friends, eager for adventure, rented a secluded cabin deep in the Appalachian Mountains. The place was perfect, far from the chaos of city life, surrounded by towering pines and endless trails. Among them was Ethan, an amateur photographer who loved capturing moments. Every trip, he documented everything, filling his camera roll with landscapes, candid smiles, and eerie shots of abandoned places they sometimes stumbled upon. On the last night of their stay, they gathered by the fire, roasting marshmallows and reminiscing about the trip. Ethan, as always, was snapping photos, taking in the dim glow of the flames against their faces. After a while, they decided to take a final group picture before heading to bed. Setting his camera on a timer, Ethan placed it on a log, ensuring everyone was in frame. The flash illuminated the night, and the camera clicked. They laughed, checked the image briefly, then headed inside. The next morning, as they packed up, Ethan scrolled through his photos. He stopped suddenly, his face turning pale. "Guys, you need to see this." They huddled around him, eyes fixed on the last photo. Everything seemed normal until they noticed the shadow. It was there, standing behind them. A tall, hunched figure, its features obscured, but its presence undeniable. The problem? There was nothing behind them but open space. No trees, no people, just darkness. Panic set in. They searched the area, hoping for an explanation. Maybe a trick of the light, an optical illusion. But deep down, they knew better. One by one, they left, unsettled, refusing to discuss it further. But Ethan couldn't let it go. Back home, he examined the image, enhancing the shadow. What he found made his blood run cold. The figure wasn't just a silhouette. Its face, if it could be called that, had hollow eyes, a twisted grin, and long, clawed fingers reaching toward them. That night, Ethan deleted the photo. But it was too late. Because as he turned off the lights, a shadow flickered in the corner of his room.